podcast. This week you're back again with G, Bella, Elliott, and so today we're going to talk about sports and the media. Who wants to open up discussion?
I'll start. So talking about like media coverage of sports, I think, there's definitely a reason for it. I think it's a good thing. But the way a lot of people do it, I think is wrong. They get caught up in a lot of stuff that doesn't matter. And I think, a lot of fans are frustrated. A lot of even like athletes and coaches are frustrated. So maybe there's a better way to do things.
I just think it can get really toxic sometimes. G had mentioned before that like sometimes, especially in a D3 setting, it could be like really upsetting to see how like D1 coverage happens and how like it just is not the same at lower levels. I think so like regarding social media instead of like newspapers and stuff, it can get really, really toxic because athletes are seeing other teammates more promoted than they are. I just think it's really not good for their mental health, or it just really doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm. It's different like pro versus college or high school or things like that. But like on the lower levels, like, players need exposure so people can know about them. Like a high school player needs colleges to see who they are so they can get recruited. A college player needs teams to see who they are so they can get drafted or something like that. But especially on social media, like you were talking about, especially because there's not really a lot of regulation. Like people can just say whatever they want about a player. Like imagine you have a bad game, you log on Instagram and like people from your school are just like talking trash about you. Like that can't be easy.
I think that especially like it affects like the professional level of sports as well too. Because I mean, you look at like first year coaches of teams and stuff, and let's say like they like start off bad and don't start off like with a winning record. They have to like look on like Twitter and like see like uprisings that like they should be tossed out and they're not good and they stink or whatever. Like that to them that affects like their job security. They have to work. They have to worry about their security. So
that was such a strong word choice.
I agree with everyone. I think that the media is definitely a toxic environment for sports, especially D3 sports, because we don't get a lot of coverage and we don't get a lot of people that look at us because we're D3. So personally, I think the media is just negative because I feel like a lot of players at a D3 school, especially maybe at TCNJ, compare themselves to D1 schools or D2 schools. And I don't think it puts them in the right headspot for games or to play their sport in general.
That's super valid. Is there such a thing as D4? Like, is there lower than D3? Like at a collegiate level?
I don't believe so. I'm not sure. I'd say no.
I just didn't know if like
we'll have our resident fact checker look it up right now.
Well, while Elliott's looking that up, I will say that media, like the creation of media, was a very good idea because it brings like people closer to their sports and the athletes that they like within their teams. But I think just as like many things, humans have been the heir to media because the things that media get the most attention on is like a lot of negativity. So you could post something, someone had a good game, might get like 10 likes, but if like they did something after that game that's like controversial or something bad, that's where it gets all the attention. That's how like that stirs up the media. So I think we just idolize all the bad things.
For the first time in professional AF history, I agree with Brandon.
I was going to disagree. I think it's like 50-50. Like I agree with that. They get like good recognition, but if the player is like well known, then obviously they get more like good feedback from that. But also I do agree with what you're saying. Like if it is negative, that's more what people focus on.
Especially for D3 schools, you're not going to see a lot of posting about positive things. Like if there's any attention, it's probably going to be from something negative happening.
Yeah, like 70-17, but on homecoming.
I thought it was 54-10.
The big thing too is I feel like sometimes people forget, like if you're a reporter, right, and you're covering a team, like the guys you're reporting on are like real people, you know, and so maybe there's some drama and maybe that's interesting for your readers, but like you have to be very careful how you handle that because if you say the wrong thing and people start to judge this person a certain way, like how's that going to affect them in their personal life?
Tom Brady and Giselle.
Well, with that, does anybody have any final thoughts?
Nope.
I think we're ready to shoot over to the interview. Who are we interviewing?
All right. This week on Professional AF, we interviewed Coach Goldsmith for TCNJ's men's basketball team, and he gave us his insight on sports and the media.
Hi, welcome back to
ProfessionalAF Podcast. Today we are here with Coach Goldsmith for TCNJ's men's basketball. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so we're just going to get right into it. Looking at the background information, you have a bachelor's degree in political science. Why'd you go down the coaching route?
Oh, man. It's a great question. So, first of all, the major I chose was a classic 18 to 22-year-old decision where I didn't really know why I was choosing it. I enjoyed the subject matter and was debating law for a little bit in college. My dad's a lawyer, and just kind of went with it. So political science itself was just something I was interested in and enjoyed in college. Miraculously, I ended up using it when I was teaching United States government. But getting into coaching, to be honest, the first time it popped into my head was when I had a pretty bad injury my junior year. I broke my leg and I was out for the majority of the season and was on the sideline. So I was trying to make an impact without playing and kind of started getting the coaching bug a little bit. I had grown up doing camps and all sorts of stuff like that, but I never really coached high-level basketball. And then I was playing professionally and I got hurt and I came back and I was a little bit kind of lost trying to figure out what to do next after I graduated college. And my old high school basketball coach actually called me and said, "Hey, why don't you just come help us out while you're figuring it out and get on the staff?" And that was, oh man, that was 13 years ago. Kept coaching ever since.
Fell in love with it. So going along with that, you've been at TCNJ now for 8 years. How do you like it? Like, do you think this was the right choice for you to make?
Yeah, no, I love it. I grew up in New Jersey. So my family is relatively local. We grew up in North Jersey and Morris County. So it's nice to be home. And I've always been at high academic places. So the coaching of high academic student athletes comes really naturally and is where a lot of my background lies and where I think I can do my best coaching. So TCNJ has been great. Been very happy ever since I got here. And again, we've had a bit of success. So it's been a good run so far in these 8 years.
So now getting into the nitty-gritty of the questions, how do you feel social media affects you and your players and the team as a whole?
Oh, man. Probably affects me and my players a little bit differently. It's kind of just a nuisance to me because we have to post on it in order to get recruits, because if you're not on social media, they just, who knows what they're thinking. So just trying to stay out there on social media for recruiting. And I know our guys like it when we post them on our social media, right? So I think culturally it's important to do. For us, for our staff, it's not something that, I think some of our younger staff like doing it, but for me, I don't want to be in charge of that. And then in general in social media, I think it's pretty detrimental to mental health in general. I think, you're always seeing the best of what's out there, including basketball wise and social life and just life in general wise, right? And so understanding that and taking everything with a bit of a grain of salt, I think is really important. I think it makes like the old saying, the grass is always greener on the other side, even worse. Like it's super green, it's bright green. Everybody's excited about it over there. So I try to encourage our guys to, especially around certain times of the year, just keep in mind that everyone is only taking pictures of the best parts of their life and has nothing, and that's what they're sharing. And just remember that when you're jealous or worried about this or that, or you don't have a highlight like they do for basketball or whatever it might be. That's kind of that's my thoughts on that.
Good. So speaking of like them being jealous, how you said that was a good segue into what I wanted to ask you. Do you think it would be like you coaching different if you were at a D1 school versus a D3?
Yeah, probably a little bit. I think it's even like it's even turned up more like on steroids at that level, because every staff has like a social media manager at that level. And I think players expect a lot in terms of social media and expect a lot in terms of exposure in that way. And again, I think it's to a detriment, like expect almost, I think that without doing a lot of the work, sometimes they like want the clout. Let's put it that way. And the clout comes with the work. And I think a lot of younger, especially freshmen who come in to any college, I think they expect the clout before the work, and the clout comes when you do the work. So a lot of people have it a little backwards. Okay, we got to get our order back right. So yeah, I think it's even turned up on another level. I think at the Division I level, it's even more of a headache. It's even more of a stress and something that has to happen, or else you can't really run a good program.
Yeah. And you brought up a social media manager, and I know for your team, you have a girl or somebody that does that all for you. Do you think it's
Yeah.
pressure on whoever you assign to do the job, or do you feel like you will them in enough where it's like, listen, you don't have to be great all the time. What you're doing is good, so they don't get that consciousness, or they don't like fear that they're not putting out enough media coverage.
Yeah. We don't try to put extra pressure on them. We try to make it pretty clear, like whenever a birthday happens, let's make a post. Whenever this happens, let's make a post. And if other things are going to be different, we're going to kind of lay that out on a Sunday or a Monday morning of like what the week should look like on Instagram or whatever. But I do think that being in that role and being in this generation, it like comes with a built-in pressure of, hey, is this caption okay, or is this transition all right, or does the filter look good, or whatever. And I typically say I don't really care, it looks fine. But I definitely, and there are times too that we feel the pressure at the top, because we're on social media too, and say Rival's doing a really good job of showcasing their athletes, or their staff, or whatever it might be. That puts a little bit of pressure on us, even if it's subconscious too. So yeah, I think it comes with a little bit of added something when you're running that stuff. And there's some sort of like who you choose to be in photos, right? I think that comes with a little pressure too, especially when they're your buddies or your friends or whatever it might be, is, a little jokes here and there about, oh, well, I haven't been on yet. What's up with that? And I think it builds up and creates this added, again, pressure or guilt when you're doing it.
And then along those lines, how do you feel like the media affects players and their mental health, or like personally just your players? Do you think it gets in their head sometime, like worrying about stuff like that, like being posted, or do you think it makes them feel like I'm not working enough because I'm not on the page?
Yeah, I do. I think all those things. I think we have in our office and in our locker room, the man in the arena. It's a quote from Teddy Roosevelt, just about essentially paraphrasing it, is the only person who can judge you is the man in the arena, and anyone outside the arena doesn't know what you're going through or hasn't put themselves out there enough to be judged, right? And it takes courage to go out on the court, play your hardest, and lose. It takes a lot of courage. And I think some people forget that. And even some of our freshmen, you can tell they're holding back because they want to always have the built-in excuse of, well, I didn't play as hard as I could have. That's why I lost. So again, it takes courage to get out there. And I think the media, judges, coaches, players, that's all they do. They just sit there and talk about it without actually having, the bravery to get out there, make a decision that gets judged by everybody else. Even at the Division III level, we joke all the time, like, everybody who comes to our games thinks they're a better coach than all three of us on our staff, even though they've never been in a gym, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just kind of comes with it. So you kind of got to block it out. You know, I think the people who do it the best in the NBA are the best players. I think the people who do it the best in college are the best players. And I think the people who struggle with it, it affects their game and their performance on the court.
And then also you talked, just to go back a little bit, I know you you were assistant coach at Amherst for 3 years, right? How do you compare the media coverage for that team versus for TCNJ now, being here for 8 years compared to the 3 years you were there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the position I was in, it comes with a lot of different pressures. You know, being an assistant and just kind of sitting back and making suggestions without making the final decision, and being the face on the decision is really easy. Being the face on a decision is tough. Again, I think it comes with a large bit of added pressure. But, you know, at Amherst, we were a top 10 team in the country. So there was a big spotlight on us. And we won a national championship when I was back there. We went to a Final Four my second year. So we were kind of expected to perform at a certain level. So, yeah, there was definitely an added pressure. And, you know, I tell our guys all the time, that pressure is a privilege you try to earn. And so we've gotten there at TCNJ where people expect us to be at a certain level and perform and win a certain amount of games. And yeah, that's difficult, but if you use it the right way, it's actually a great benefit to the team and the program, kind of understanding that the expectations for us are higher than they used to be. And they're higher than they used to be for reasons because we performed higher than we used to. So, you know, again, I think anytime you up level, right? Like up level your program or your division or get, you know, whatever, comes a giant bigger spotlight. And some people don't like that, so that's fine. Stay where you are. And other people, you just got to embrace it and just kind of be ready for it. It comes with kind of the gig. It's just a piece of it now, where people are going to maybe question your decisions if they don't go right. But if you get it right, nobody says anything. So at the end of the day, winning helps a lot.
And that was just to go along with that as well. Like you said, you guys are doing better, so you're getting put under more of a spotlight. So do you think your team and the wins that you guys are getting is putting you in a better placement to get recruits? Or is your social media winning those things? Is that putting you in a better spots for better recruits?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think that the level of recruit we can get a conversation with now has grown a ton compared to when we first got here. In terms of, maybe not in terms of ability level, but in terms of exposure. You know, what we used to do was try to find the same level of ability that was less exposed, because we didn't think we might have a shot at them if they were out there all the time. So we would go to weird tournaments or stuff that no other coaches went to, and now we can go to the big ones and still have a chance at a high performer, which is different. But again, it comes with pluses and minuses. I think some of those underexposed kids come to college with a chip on their shoulder, and some of those overexposed kids come to college with a certain set of expectations, or you know, just again expecting gifts when they get here, when it's, again, you got to work to get what you get.
Yeah, you guys just actually looked at someone from my high school, so that's good, because we're South Jersey, ACIT, Desi Stroud, yeah.
He
that's
just
my
came to the campus, yes.
Mm-hmm. And Coach Nelson, that's like a school dad for me, so I know
Oh,
you guys
really?
are getting, because in South Jersey there's I just saw a bus a couple weeks ago that said TCNJ. So when they were we're coming up, I was like, oh, that's so cool, because there's only 3 kids from South Jersey here. So I know you guys are getting the media exposure now as a D3 school, so that's good.
Yeah. Desi's a great example, because he's the only way to describe him is he's like a freak athlete. He's fast, he jumps, he's crazy. So again, I think if he was on a team who was at every single tournament that's ever been played, some coach would take a chance on him because they see how high he can jump and how fast he is. But because he has less exposure, you don't get as many chances at seeing that athleticism kind of pop, right?
Yeah.
So he's a really good example of a guy I think has that maybe that chip on his shoulder.
Sweet kid. He's like my little brother, so I know he was up here, so I just thought I'd bring it up. But
Nice.
just to tie everything in, do you think you've had like a bad experience with the team in the media, or do you think it's all just like you win some, you lose some, it is like what it is?
Yeah. I don't think I would have like a specific example, but I do think the better we got when we did take a loss, it was a little more frustrating to deal with media because there were more questions or eyes or certain tone. And again, but once you take a step back, you realize that's a good thing because you earn that extra pressure, right? So it's all about the way you kind of view it and look at it versus kind of allowing the tone of a question or whatever to affect your attitude or your answer. I think part of the problem too with the media in general and those experiences is it makes coaches more guarded in a lot of ways. So they don't really let it out in a question, coach speak. That's like a classic little term, coach speak. It's like you just say, oh, we're going out there, we're trying 100% and we'll let the score fall where it does, But I don't know, I would like to be more open in that way. But again, with more eyes, you have to be more careful. So it's super tricky to navigate.
And you kind of answered the last question I have for you was like, what were things you like them to ask you versus things you wouldn't like, you wish they didn't ask you? And then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. It's really nice when people ask like specific questions or questions that make it obvious or known that they were paying attention or have some type of like invested interest in it versus just kind of like, hey, what did you think? Or, hey, this was the score, or what happened? Maybe more of like, like what was the game plan? I noticed you did this at this time. What was the reasoning behind that? And, how do you think it affected the game? So a little bit more specific stuff is more fun to answer, and because you can kind of just like get into a flow and really, talk through your thoughts. So I think those generic questions lead to generic answers, and those more specific ones lead to kind of more interesting, noteworthy answers, especially in sports.
Thank you so much. You have anything you want to add?
No, I think we're all good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Coach. It was really nice talking to you, and I hope you guys have a great season. I'll be out there watching.
Let's go.
So after hearing the interview, what do you guys think about sports in the media?
I think Goldsmith had a really interesting take on like how D1, D3 athletics are like portrayed in the media. He kind of said that they're starting to get more coverage, which I thought was interesting. I have no idea what the record is or anything like about like the team, but he says they're getting better, so I'm going to kind of take his word for it. And that as they're getting better, they're getting more coverage. And he was talking about how having that coverage is helping them get more recruits and like go to better tournaments to get recruits. And like, I just thought that was interesting because I didn't know that all of that went into it.
It's exciting to have a team on the come up. But you're right that like you said, you don't know their record. I don't know their record. I didn't know they were on the come up. It's like, why don't we know?
True.
If this is an exciting thing that's happening with our basketball program, like,
oh my God, that's so
why
true.
don't people know about it?
Oh my God, that's so true. Media's lacking.
Well, that's something he said too, though. He said like he wished it got more coverage for what they're putting in, because he said he's got players that are coming in and putting in the work, and then it's like when they do their highlights of the week, they're only focusing on one player, but he wished there was something where it was like they were focused on, oh, the team did this is how they work, this is how they all like did this and that. So he said that's something that like he thinks media, and especially media at like D3 schools, could work on.
Well, and Elliott, you're the editor-in-chief for The Signal. Do you guys cover anything about like the basketball team?
We generally write about all the varsity sports, but we definitely don't go super in depth, and I think we could, so whether it's us, whether it's local papers, one thing that pro sports do is they write a lot about storylines, and that's what makes it so interesting. you know, because it almost feels like there's like stuff at stake. And we don't really see that with our school. So, you know, I take responsibility for, you know, maybe not trying hard enough to get that out in the signal. And in terms of other, like the Trentonian or whatever else, like, you know, they could probably do the same thing.
I was going to say, it's probably not on you. Like, nobody talks about it. Like, I feel like we don't really hear about it. And that's mostly due to social media, because everybody gets their, like, information off of social media. And when things aren't being posted or nobody's, like, hyping it like it should be, nobody's going to know anything. Like, it's just hard. And kind of how, like, I thought it was interesting how, like, Goldsmith he didn't, like, contradict himself, but he was, like, he said how detrimental social media is to mental health, but said that they need more of it. Which, like, I just thought was interesting because, like,
another thing he said too, that like
6. In that 2 + 2 = 6. Like, that's what that made me think of. Like, I don't know.
Another thing he said that like contradicted his point was like he said they have like I guess you could call it like marketing or like a media manager, and he said that when she comes to him with things, he just goes, yeah, it looks fine, put it out, rather than actually like looking at it, seeing what they can add, take away to make it more presentable or make it more so that it's getting more coverage around the school and even on social media.
Yeah, I believe he said it was a nuisance.
Yeah, he kind of took the approach of like, you know, that's their problem. I don't really want to deal with it. And,
which is respectable to a degree.
But at some point, someone's got to deal with it. And if you want it to get better, and if you have ideas about how it can get better, like at some point, someone has to step up and say, well, hey, here's how we can do it. You know?
Right. And like at a D1 school, I get like his point where he's like, I'm like, he's the coach. He's focused on the team and making the team better. And I get that. And it's respectable. But like at a D1 school, that coach wouldn't have to deal with it. But at a D3 school, it's different. You're going to have to, if you want to see a change, you're going to have to take initiative to get it. Like nobody's going to do it for you here.
Just to like maybe defend his stance on like the fact that like they need to like increase their media coverage. But at the same time, like the social media might be affecting like negatively our minds or whatever. I think like every one of us kind of deals with that every day. Like I know for myself, like if I post on like Instagram, like I kind of think it's like stupid because I see everyone's posting the best of themselves on Instagram. But I think we all realize the importance of like posting on like Instagram and stuff to like put yourself out there like on media to one, just let know people you're alive, like you're doing well.
What? It's not wrong. People, he said that's what Goldsmith says. Goldsmith said, he said people post the best of them live. So
100%. But like I'm not checking your Instagram to make sure you're alive, bro.
That's why why do you post on Instagram?
Not to make sure that
to get validation from your friends and let people know that you're alive.
Not
I agree.
Yeah, maybe that's a thing that they could do, like be more real on Instagram. Like let's say after a tough loss, you know, a lot of teams, even like professional teams or social media, they'll have like short caption like, oh, we lost to the
or they
Bears
won't post it at all.
Yeah, seriously.
It's like, you know, maybe we want to see that. Like maybe we want to hear the players talk about like, you know, what do you think? Like how are you gonna motivate yourself to get better next time, you know? And I think when they're so focused on only posting the good stuff, then it just like upholds that whole social media being like fake thing.
Straight up, like are Tom and Giselle really getting a divorce?
Oh my God.
I can't let it go.
Just before we close out, I just want to say too, though, I'm glad that he said there's enough though to where they are getting enough media coverage. Like I was able to like talk to him about someone they're recruiting from home, and I live AC. Everybody here is from North, so being able to like be like, oh well, people from where I live now are starting to come up here and recognize TCNJ. It shows that we are getting some media coverage, but obviously we need to do better.
Straight up,
agreed.
So. With that being said, thank you for coming to Professional AF Podcast. We hope you enjoy it, and we hope to see you next week.
Oh, and Bella's 21 AF.
21 AF!
Yay! Okay, anyways.